Hello, pirates and pickpockets. My name is TB's Guy, and yeah, okay, fine, I'll do it again. Riot have released yet another cinematic teaser trailer for yet another thing in the League of Legends universe. In this case, it is the Ruined King video game, which is being handled by Airship Syndicate, which is the same studio that did Darksiders Genesis most recently. But a little further back in time, they also created Battle Chasers Night War, which is a really good story-focused single-player RPG. And wouldn't you know it, the Ruined King 2 is going to be a story-focused single-player RPG. What a convenient synergy of things happening right there. And, well, there's a cinematic teaser trailer for it, so I'm obligated by contract to take a look at it and talk about the art and the animations and the stuff that's happening in it, and maybe do a little bit of speculation about what we might be able to expect from the video game itself. And what we can expect from the video game is that some stuff is happening in Bilgewater concerning the undead. Ari and Yasuo are there because they are some of the most popular characters in the game, and Braum is there because, I don't know, probably because they just wanted Braum and Illaoi to flirt, because, in case you don't know from her voice lines, Illaoi has a little bit of a thing for Braum, or anyway, she will have a little bit of a thing for Braum when she meets him, because the voice lines in League of Legends are hypothetical. It doesn't matter. Anyway, those are some of the characters that you're going to be able to play in the game. There's some theories going around, sensibly, that Lucian and Senna are at the very least going to show up as well, and probably a bunch of secondary characters that have been introduced in the Bilgewater lore are going to be there as well. Who knows if some other champions might not make a cameo. Hecarim, Thresh, Callista, maybe Ledros, who's not a champion, but kind of should be. But one champion that is definitely going to make a cameo is this emo fuckboy right here, the Ruined King himself. Now, if you are not familiar with the Ruined King, let me give you a quick refresher on the guy. He is the guy who puts the name to the Blade of the Ruined King, and in case you're wondering, the Blade of the Ruined King is there. It's this bit, like not the cross guard, not the big cross thing that's happening at the hilt a bit, but that right there, if you look at the new icon for the Ruined King blade, that's what that looks like. He is, like, once upon a time there was a king, and he was super into his wife, like, probably too into his wife. Like, he made it kind of weird. Anyway, his wife got sick, and so he sent Callista and Hecarim and a bunch of other soldiers all over the world to find me a cure for my wife! And Callista eventually found the Blessed Isles, which probably had a cure for his wife, but in the meantime, his wife was dead, and he was going a little bit very insane about it, and so he went to the Blessed Isles anyway and was like, "Revive my wife!" And the monks on the Blessed Isles were like, no, that's a bad, no, because she'd be undead, and that would be bad. And he's like, "My wife!" And then he cast a spell, tried to revive his wife. She was undead. He went a little bit more crazy about that, destroyed the Blessed Isles, turned them into the Shadow Isles. Everything went entirely to hell. Some of it was probably Thresh's fault. Pretty much up to speed with him. And so that's why he looks like sort of a low-rent Kylo Ren cosplayer in the way that he's character designed here, because unlike what you might have thought about the Ruined King, like you think of someone like some ancient king of some ancient land, it immediately conjures up like a dude with a beard and like wrinkles, and he's old and he speaks with a very dignified tone and stuff like that. That's not what we got here. What we got here is a young, jilted romantic, like the dude who writes emo poetry in his diary and makes everything that happens to everyone around him about him and his fifis all of the time, and who can never, ever let go of a goddamn thing. Toxic boyfriend material. That's essentially what this kid is, right down to the bleeding heart that he has etched on the front of his own chest, or maybe he's cut his heart out so that he won't have to feel his pain, or some emo bullshit like that. And that's, fitting character design for a character who's supposed to be that kind of person. I also like the little detail that he's got tiny little hearts. Yes, I know it's supposed to be like the leaves on the frontispiece there, but he's got tiny little hearts all along his coat like that, which I just think, it's very on the nose, but it works really well. That's like anime levels of unsubtle, but it's lovely. That's the Ruined King. He's doing something. We don't know what exactly he's doing. We know that Senna has been investigating him because she knows that he's up to something, but she doesn't know what. He's been going to old ruins. He's been doing ghost stuff. We're not really sure what, but it's probably bad because he's the evil king of the ghosts. So, probably not going to be great for anyone if he gets to do whatever the hell he wants to do. And it's probably going to affect Bilgewater first, because Bilgewater is the closest human settlement to the Shadow Isles, which is why it's Bilgewater heroes who are probably going to be leading the charge in taking the fight to him. Anyway, let's talk about the animation on this animation thing itself, shall we? And we open on an establishing shot of a mug and some coins on a table and a hand and like an arm with some tattoos on it. And if you are an observant, like, connoisseur of fantasy tropes in general, you can look at this stuff and go, okay, it's a seedy tavern somewhere. Maybe it's like piratey or something along those, because we've got this sort of lo-fi pirate aesthetic thing going. You can kind of suss out the kind of place that it is, but the more important role of the mug is to be set up as a visual thing for later. Specifically, for that's why we open on the shot of the mug, is to establish it so that we know, oh, the mug is here, and we go there, and then the mug gets thrown, and it hits him in the face. That's why the establishing shot is on the mug. Anyway, we open on this seedy underground Bilgewater bar thing, which Illaoi and Misfortune have just decided, like, I guess, to kick everyone's ass and kill everyone who, like, opposes them in there for unspecified reasons. And the reason they've decided to do that is to show you that they are massive badasses. Because what this teaser trailer is like, yes, it's the cinematic announcement trailer for like the Ruined King game, but what it actually is a sizzle reel. Specifically, it's a sizzle reel that's supposed to show you, hey, look at these cool badass characters who do cool badass stuff. Well, if you play the Ruined King game, you get to be these cool badass characters and do cool badass stuff with them in cool badass situations where they get to show how cool and badass they are in cool and badass ways. This is all the ass they're gonna kick, this is how they're gonna kick that ass, and this is how much ass is going to have been kicked once you are done. What it doesn't show us is anything about the story, anything about what this game is gonna be about, like whose character arc is there gonna be a character arc for anyone? What's the stakes? Like, what is the Ruined King doing? What happens if the heroes fail? Like, why are any of them there? Like, none of that is in the teaser trailer. It doesn't have to be, of course, but it's just like, when you are assessing what a piece of animation, like when you're assessing animation and cinematography like this, you have to understand what the product is trying to do. Like, what is this animated short trying to do? And what it's trying to do is sell you not on the gameplay of the Ruined King game, not on the story of the Ruined King game, but just on that, like on that feeling right there, and the badass, cool, super badass, cool stuff that's gonna happen. And these are like a group of badasses who are all getting together on a ship, and they're going to like a cool badass ghost place, and they're gonna kick this twink's ass, and like, that's, yeah, get pumped up, get hype. That's all this trailer is trying to do. And that's something that becomes important to analysis of the animation as we return once again to the establishing shot of the Bilgewater trailer. And I just want to say I like this guy. He's clearly wandering around very drunk, like rambling to nobody but himself. And I just like his little gesture. Like the little, he's gonna do the thing. Like, he's like, "Day, I'm walking here. Day, I'm Italian. Yeah, arguing about spaghetti or something," which I just appreciate greatly. Another little thing that's worth noting is not important. It's just worth noting because I'm me and I note these things, and that's kind of my job. Watch the mug. That beer is hand animated. Like, that's not CG beer. That's someone sat down and just painted a few frames of beer spilling out of the cup, like probably directly onto the finished animation, maybe before the lighting effects were applied, who knows. But that's 2D animated. That's not especially important, I just thought I'd bring it up. And in case anyone's wondering, it's animated on ones. I'll explain what that means later if it becomes relevant. Anyway. Question number 1 for you guys out there. After watching that thing happen right there, what do you know about these two characters? Imagine that you have never heard of League of Legends. Imagine that you know who Misfortune is, who you don't know who Illaoi is, you don't know anything about Nagakeiboros, or the Ruined King, or Bilgewater, or anything. What do you know about these two characters based on the thing that just happened? Let's go back. Illaoi has just done a tremendously violent thing. She's just, like, kicked this door in and smashed that guy over a table. Like, she's caused some destruction and some violence and some pain. How does she respond to having done that? Well, she doesn't. Now, imagine a different scene. Imagine Illaoi does the same thing. She kicks in the door, the guy goes over the table, but instead of standing like that, she's standing, like, with her hands up, like, just, like, her hands up in front of her face and, like, crouched down, low center of gravity, shoulders up, guarding her front, clearly ready to fight with like fists in front of her and a very angry expression. That is a very, very different thing than what's happening right here, because what Ilaoi is actually doing is that she's got her chest forward, her shoulders back, her head held high. She's not looking at the scene of destruction that she's just caused. She's looking at misfortune. Eye-fucking her a little bit, actually, it kind of looks like, which I fully approve of. But everything you see about her body language right now is that she's just caused a tremendous amount of violence, but she's 0% worried about what anyone is going to do about it. It's like, are they going to fight back? Doesn't matter. I can handle it because I am an unconquerable badass of epic proportions, and nothing that could possibly happen in the next 10 seconds or so could possibly worry me. That's what you're getting from her body language. Same thing goes for Misfortune, except it's a slightly different thing. She, too, is doing, like, back straight, shoulders back, hand on a hip, like, head up, looking forward, confident, powerful, in control, but she's also doing the little thing with the mug, where Ilaoi has kicked the guy down, his mug is flying up in the air, she just catches it casually, no problem. By the way, yes, the beer is hand animated, and yes, it's animated on ones, thanks for asking. And she says to the dudes whose friend she just, like, knocked over a table and whose beer she just stole, she does that little thing right there. That little thing with her... Let's zoom in on that, because it's really good. She does that little thing with her eyebrows, which I just like that so much, because watch what happens, right? She goes from this, like, kind of dour expression, like, with her eyebrows down, that looks a little bit tense, right? And then as she opens up her expression, like, she opens her expression by, like, by smiling a little bit more, by raising her head a little bit, and by raising her eyebrows. Watch what happens with the eye. The highlight appears again, and she goes from this, like, kind of, like, badass expression to this very open, friendly, completely relaxed expression. Just a little gesture to go, hey, what's up? As though this is just like a normal Thursday morning for her, and nothing exceptional whatsoever has happened. Again, we have that, like, unflappable badass attitude thing going on, where something incredibly violent has just happened, but she doesn't seem to care. Wow, she must be an incredible badass in order to be so cavalier about this thing. But we also get a difference, like, where Ilaoi is more like just brash confidence, where it's like, I'm gonna kick this door down and no one's gonna do anything about it, and I know that because I'm built like a brick shit house, and what are these little guys gonna do? Misfortune is a slightly different thing. Yeah, she's powerful and in control, but she's also cocky and kind of sassy. It's like, hey, how you doing? I just stole your man's beer. What are you gonna do about it? And then we get this lovely reaction shot, which we stay on. Like, for like, what? Yeah, about a second. Just a second of absolutely nothing whatsoever happening as these guys are just staring, like, just trying to process. Like, they're in the process of going from recognizing what has happened to anger. Like, they need to move through the necessary brain steps in order to get there. So you just get this. And then violence. Roar! I'm gonna do a violence to you! And how do Misfortune and Ilaoi react to that? Well, not at all. Like, Ilaoi isn't even looking at the guy. And even when, like, she's looking at Misfortune drinking, like, oh, well, she can hold her beer. And then she kind of blinks, and then she just looks away. Like, she's not even, like, the guy, she's not even looking at the guy, she's looking, like, over his head. Like, she's admiring the decor or something. She's not even the littlest tiny bit worried about him. And Misfortune, for her part, is just drinking. And then she rears back, and whoop! Kerblamo! There's a couple of difficult things going on in these two shots, by the way, like from here to here. There's a couple of deceptively difficult things going on, because this is a full frontal throw. Like, Misfortune has to throw this thing from there, essentially at the viewer, like straight into the screen, like so. And that can actually be kind of hard to make that read, like to make that look good. Because, like, it's a very, like, if you're not careful about how you animate that, it can actually look really flat and kind of fly swatted, like not, like there isn't a lot of depth in the image. So what the animator is doing, and you can kind of see that here, is that just a little tiny bit, they're breaking Misfortune's character model. Like, this is not really something that an arm, under normal circumstances, is, like, fully able to do. But because we're hiding with a bunch of motion blur, and because it's happening quickly, we're just breaking the character model a little bit to exaggerate the motion just a tad, so that instead of, like, her just, like, swinging it, like, basically from here up here and then at the camera in like a straight motion, we get this arc right here, like that arc right there. That kind of helps describe the way that she's whipping it at this guy's face and helps deliver some of the power of what's going on there. And something similar is happening here, because his reaction to this, and by the way, notice something, how long is the mug actually on screen in this shot? 1 frame, 2 frames, gone. Never see it again. Well, we do see it again, but it's only on screen for 2 frames, and we don't get to see the collision. Like, we don't see the moment that it hits the guy's head, we see the moment immediately before it hits his head, and then we see the moment immediately after. Those are the only 2 shots that we're gonna get. And part of that is down, like, that's a decision made by the animator in order to sell the speed and power with which Miss Fortune is winging that mug. Because you could do it slower. Like, you could add more frames of animation where the mug, like, collides with the guy's head. But if you do that, you get less of this snap, like that, woof, that, like, all of a sudden, kapow, falling backwards thing. So that's a timing decision that the animator makes, is that it needs to be on screen for just long enough, about 2 frames, for the human eye to catch it and understand what the thing is. And then we go directly from that to, boom, the extreme key pose where this guy's head turns into a penis. I hope I don't get demonetized for that. As he falls backwards. And as he falls backwards, let's talk a moment about physics. Because so long as you are on planet Earth, you are at all times, 24/7, 365 days a year, for every single moment of your entire human life, being affected by Earth's gravity at a constant rate all of the time. If your feet leave the ground, and you are not holding yourself up by some other means, you are instantly falling. Instantly. There's no delay. Like, the moment you are not holding yourself up against gravity, you will start falling. Now, this guy's feet at this point have clearly left the ground already. They've long since left, like, they probably leave the ground, like, right about here. But take a look at, well, I hesitate to say his crotch. Take a look at his belt area, let's say that. And notice that it's not falling. Like, it ain't going nowhere. There's no gravity affecting this. He's just spinning freely in air. Now, if he was actually affected by gravity, he would start falling immediately, but this is not reality. This is a cartoon, and so we are employing a little bit of cartoon physics in order to really sell the falling motion of this bad guy. Because rather than actually fall over backwards, what the guy does is he essentially rotates around to the axis of his own hips in midair, and you can see how, like, his legs are getting brought up, and as his knees reach their highest point, which is, like, right about here, that's when gravity starts affecting the rest of his body, and then the rest of his body falling down essentially pulls the legs down after him, as though he's a slinky, essentially, like, as though he's a slinky that's been thrown off a set of stairs, rather than, like, a meaty physical human body that's affected all by gravity all at the same time. He's got this slinky feeling, like, whoop. And all of that is just in service of making this read. Because if he was animated in a realistic fashion, in a way that was realistically affected by gravity, this shot wouldn't look very good. He would just be down. There would really not be a lot going on. But instead we get this lovely bit of, like, just a little bit of cartoon spaghetti animation. And it's basically all just in service of making the fall look a little bit better. And all of this is... That's it. That's all you get out of, like, the animator has done all of this work to make this guy's fall look really good, but all he's getting out of it is there. Boom. And that, my friends, is why these animation breakdowns tend to be like half an hour long for every minute of animation I'm going through. Is because, and we've only gone through 15 seconds, by the way, at this point, because there is so much work. Like, even on stuff that seems so simple and, like, it's a no-brainer, there's so much work that goes into every second of animation that you see. Whether it's 2D or whether it's 3D, there's so much work that goes into it that covering even a small fraction of it takes a hell of a long time for any length of animation. And I haven't even talked about, like, this guy, Here's another thing to talk about, something that's not often talked about when we talk about 3D animation, the role of the lighting artist, who might be also the VFX artist, or who might actually just be the animator themselves. Sometimes people are multidisciplined, but a lot of the time, you will have a dedicated VFX or lighting person, like whose job it is to light the scene itself. And his job, or their job rather, is to make sure that the light that falls on the character model matches the light that is in the environment. In this case, we have this warm, golden tavern light thing going on, and you can see that all along the edges of this character, right? He's got this golden edge lighting thing going on. Except, when you think about it, if the primary light source of the tavern is all the lamps that are hanging back here, like maybe there's another lamp hanging out somewhere, but if you look at the shadows on the floor, you can see that most of the light is coming from, like, the center of the tavern. How can he have edge lighting here? Like, does all of that light make sense from the perspective of physics? Well, probably not, because the job of the lighting effects artist is not just to make sure that the light looks physically and in terms of, like, obeying the laws of physics correct, but also making sure that the light is doing the job of communicating the character's animation, making sure that there aren't shadows falling in inconvenient places that makes the movement look muddled, to make sure that the highlights are placed just in such a way that quick animation and quick movement looks like it's placed in the scene, like they belong in the environment that they're in, but also so that it looks readable. And, like, one thing you can see is how, like, here, there's no edge lighting around the right side of his face, right? But then, in the very next frame, all of a sudden, instantly, that edge lighting appears, and in fact, it grows, and he gets even more edge lighting around his cheek, right here, as he gets closer to the camera. Does that make sense in terms of physics? It might not, but it might be so that there is this bright line of gold that delineates his face from the rest of, like, his upturned shoulder, and, like, make sure that the face doesn't get confused, because it's all flesh color after all, with his arm, and make sure that these little moments in the animation are as readable as possible. Sometimes that can be achieved by just placing the light carefully in the scene. Sometimes a lighting artist might need to actually go through this shit frame by frame in order to make sure that everything works exactly the way that it's supposed to. It can be very simple, it can be extremely complicated, and again, that can be hours and hours and hours of work just for that. Just for that. Like, because again, the light that falls on the guy as he's falling down, the shadows, the lighting, all over this character model, it might have had to be designed specifically for the purpose. Who knows? It's not something I can't really tell because I'm not a lighting artist. I just know that there's like a million crap tons of work that actually goes into this stuff just to make the light look okay for the scene that they're in, even in something as simplistic as a single camera centered shot like this. So, again, character animation. Misfortune and Alawi, like, these guys have just, like, okay, a brawl is going to happen now. These guys are standing up, they're charging at them, it's like, oh, there's a whole thing happening. It's like, oh! How do they react? Ilawi is just supremely unimpressed, like, she does not give a shit. And Misfortune is just like, well, I had a nice drink of beer. And then they look at each other, and they just go, yeah, let's kick some ass, why not? And then they dash past each other like this. And here again, we get some of my favorite stuff, which is 2D hand animation. Look at this stuff. As Misfortune whips out her guns and spins them around in her hand, that spinning motion is accentuated with just a little bit of... this could be a 3D VFX object that's created in real time. But it looks to me like it's probably a 2D artist who sits down with each frame and just paints these little smear lines across the gun in order to make that look so slick. Like, that looks really cool, doesn't it? And that's going to happen again in just a second. Take a look at what happens as Misfortune leans into this magnificent whip kick. Again, these little smears painted on frame by frame, as far as I can tell, by an animator. And as she turns around to sweep the leg of the guy coming in from behind her, again, the movement, like that sweeping, spinny movement is accentuated with, as far as I can tell, what is 2D hand-drawn animation, which is animated on ones, in case anyone cares to know. So let's take a look at this guy, who doesn't matter. Like, he's just, this is the red bandana guy, or the blue bandana guy with the red scarf. She just, like, smacks him right across the face. And I love the way he falls over. Because it's like his face just kind of gets planted into the floor, and then his legs like whoop, tumble up over him, and he sort of tumbles over the axis of his own head. It's just not physics realistic at all. Like, not even a little bit physics realistic. In fact, it looks kind of clunky and weird. But it's like, that's because this is not important. Like, it happens that fast, and you don't look at him, you don't think about him after he's gotten kicked. The only thing that matters is Miss Fortune's actual kick, and she does that in high heels, man. That must hurt like a mother frigger to get like, winged in the face with. Like, oof. And you don't think about him anymore, which is why the animator can probably afford to be a little bit... Just let him ragdoll a little bit in an unrealistic way. It doesn't matter. He just needs to move in a way that sort of implies that he's been falling over. And the key poses. Let's talk about the key poses. This is an obvious key pose. Like that right there. Like this is the end of a series of movements that leads into like a really just a strong, striking, powerful, like just, oh, it looks so good. Those poses. Now, key poses don't always look cool, but they do look finished. Like they look like the end point of a series of animations. And it's just like, oh, it's so good. And then, boom, the gunshot transitions her. Like, the gunshot pushes her back, and she uses that recoil to kind of push herself a little bit to her feet. As she gets up and goes down into, oh, that's such a good pose. Does the little sweep around. And then, oh, transitions in. Like, and just look at the action line on that shit. Like, just, oh, the good curves, man. Like, that's the natural flow, like from her legs all the way up through her torso and then into her arm. And then, ba-boom! And then my girl Ilaoi, just guns are for losers. Just bodily picking up a dude and letting gravity do the work. Kerschmack. And again, as far as I can tell, hand-animated magic smears to follow the thing around. Oh, that's good action posing. Oh, look at that. Like, look at how the curve, like the swing, it swings around and you get that curve and see how her hair, they use the hair to accentuate the twist. And then like she's raising her leg like a baseball pitcher. And then she comes down and you can see how she uses her entire upper torso rotating around that waist just to like really rotate into like, and then whoom. Oh, that's good. And again, we get this lovely key pose as she really just, oh, that's good. That is such a good, like, zoosh. Oh, that's good. Excellent. And flash frames. We see a couple of these here. This is a flash frame. Sorry for the bright light. Not really something I can control. And it's so called because it happens in a flash. It just exists on screen for one moment, exclusively to basically accentuate the power of something that is happening. And then we get to see Brom, who is no longer satisfied having people stand behind. Now those standing before Brom must be broken. So, we get this fireball thing, trebuchet, flaming rock thing coming at him. God knows where the hell that came from. I don't know that the Frostguard have access to that sort of thing. And then we get this complete anime bullshit, like just with the speed lines and like him charging up his fist like he's All Might in My Hero Academia. And it's just like, boom. And again, flash frames, we get two of them this time. A black flash frame with white effects, and then a white flash frame with black effects. And then ba-boom. And all of this fire effect right here, and all of that blue effect that's going on back there, all seems to be hand animated and animated on ones as well. And again, with the key poses, man. Like, Doom. And look at the curve, like, look at how, like, the curve of his punch just, like, flows so beautifully into his upper body and down through his character. Like, oh, it's such a good motion. And as he winds up in the air, we get more 2D hand-drawn animation effects, just accentuating the flip. And not just the, like, the white leading edge here, but you can see there's some black smearing going on just at the edge of, like, of his boots to really accentuate that he's doing this big frontal flip around. And then you get this, right? Like, he's spinning around his own axis, right? Like, he's whipped this thing around, he's spinning around his own axis, but watch what happens as he gets to the point where he's about to throw it down. The rotation just stops. Like, it just stops and, like, slows down so much that it's effectively stopped until such a point where he can do this wrestling power slam And here you can really see, okay, so this is really cool. So there's motion blur being applied here, like visual motion blur effect being applied in camera. But then there's also a 2D artist of some kind who sat down frame by frame over top of Braum coming down and painted these smear lines all over the character model to really sell the speed and power of Braum coming down like a ton of ice. And then Kershmak. And then 3D effects for the ice crystals that are forming. But then as the explosion comes up under the Rakhor, the Frostguard soldiers, more flash frames. First the white flash frame with the black effects, then the black flash frame with the white effects. And then a clever little thing. A moment of normalcy, and then boom. More 2D animated lights and explosions. And these lights are actually animated on a 1s and 2s. You can see here, I can cycle through 2 frames of animation, but nothing happens to the lighting effects. That's because this particular little bit of the lighting effect is animated on 2s. Which is probably just because that makes it... that sells the movement better? Yeah, probably. It wasn't really necessary to animate it on 1s. But the clever thing is that they're applying a really, really powerful light source behind these guys and completely occluding, like, so that they just get completely blacked out against the power of this ice explosion that's happening behind them, and it just looks waba-boom! All of it just, again, in service of, remember, the main goal of this cinematic is to sell absolutely everybody as maximum 110% badass at all times. And he's coming out of a pub called the Flying Poro, so I imagine he's been there for a drink of goat's milk, probably. And he falls into step along the others, and we get even more slow-motion walking montage as Braum is clearly checking her out. Like, clearly he's like, oh, strong woman. Would make for good goat herd. And now, more anime bullshit with Yasuo, with more hand-animated effects swinging around him to accentuate the spinning motion, because he's not really spinning that much. He's just, like, making, like, one rotation. And then he's coming down, and again, the strong key poses, like that right there, coming down with a sword. Yeah! And then 2D animation smear. Boom, flash frame, first the dark one, then the light one, and then just anime bullshit all over the frame. Hand-animated effects too. God, that looks gorgeous. As, again, gravity is completely suspended, as Yasuo is being held up in midair by fucking nothing, basically. Like, you can't... Even if Yasuo is strong enough to hold himself in position in midair, like, if gravity was working, he would be sliding off the edge. Like, his sword would, like, collide, and then instead of being held up, like, you can't balance on that. The sword would just be sliding off of the spear, and he would be falling down. But because this is anime bullshit, we get this anime clash thing where it's like... almost as though they're pushing against each other. And here we get the introduction of Action Ari, who's got a completely new costume on her as well, which I really like. Like, it looks much more like a battle costume than her, like, her normal, what is it, a hanbok? Or is it a kimono? I don't know what her traditional costume looks like, really. What traditional kind of clothing it looks like, I mean. But this one is, like, feels more athletic and more like it's combat ready. And she, again, like, oh, look at the gorgeous... And here you can really see some... Like, here you can see the model really getting stretched and smeared. Like, look at those hands. Here, I think the character animator is really breaking... Yeah, they're really spaghettifying Ari here to make her jump, like, in a really cool way. Like, just swoop right over, and they're using the tail to accentuate the jump as well, which is so good. Swoop right over, do some split kicks in midair, because why not? And here, again, you can really see how she's being spaghettified and turned into rubber. Just to sell, like, these are smear frames just to sell the athleticism. Because Ari, like, that's also the thing about, like, Illaoi doesn't have a lot of those. Illaoi doesn't generally, in the shots that we got of her doing action, she didn't really spaghettify that way. She didn't really, like bend in the same way, because Illaoi is a brick shithouse. Her whole thing is, like, her animation is all about power and sturdiness. Ari, on the other hand, is all about agility and slipperiness, and so for her, in terms of her animation aesthetic, it makes sense to treat her a lot more like rubber, a lot more like spaghetti, because that helps you sell, like, the graceful athleticism of the flips and kicks that she does, even though when you catch some of this when you catch some of this stuff on freeze frame, it looks completely ridiculous. In fact, it looks physically impossible because well, it is. And again, a little bit of accentuation of her movements by adding just a little bit of motion smearing in 2D over the top of like the rotation of her body, especially as she comes down right here. And again, man, look at just the quality of these key poses, man. They're so good. As he comes down with a spear. Ah, that's really good. Like, look at that. Like, that's so cool. Whoom. But Ari, of course, has already long since dodged away. And she's about to do some anime bullshit to him. Because 2D hand-animated visual effects applied over the top of the 3D model with a lot of light and glow effects that are being applied. Remember how I talked about how there's a lighting and VFX guy who's probably responsible, like, for handling, like, making sure that the light on the characters look correct to the environment that they're in? Look what happens as we go from this to this. We go from a lighting scheme that's like pink and like oranges, and there's a little bit of red, and there's purple, and it's got this like a late night sort of sunset vibe to the whole lighting aesthetic. As she spins around and her power reaches a crescendo, not only does the light on Ari change, the entire scene, like just the entire place that they're fighting in, turns dark blue, and her eyes start glowing. Like, they start glowing here, right? But it's not that visible. But then when the whole scene darkens, all of a sudden this is like, oh, you done fucked up, son. And that shit looks brutal. And again, the quality of those key poses, man. Like, oh, that looks so good. And we use Ari's own Foxfire, whoop, to transition us into her. And by the way, I really like Ari's character design in like, fucking hell. She looks so badass. She looks so fucking cool. Normally, Ari, like, traditionally in League of Legends, she's been a seductress character, right? She's been, like, more of a kissy-faced charm. Ooh, come and kiss me. Oh, no, I'm gonna kill you with some magic, tee-hee. She's been more of that kind of a character. This cinematic casts her as, like, just a stone-cold murder sorceress. Like, look at this. Look at that. Like, look at... God damn, that face has some character to it, doesn't it? I fucking love this. This is the superior Ari. This is way better than the base game. And you see how, like, as we transition from here, where she mostly looks human, as we go into this phase right here, you notice what happens around her lips? Like, they're reddish here, right? But as the blue light takes over, then the dark shadow underneath her nose and her lips themselves, all of a sudden they become pitch black. As though she's got a fox nose, as though she's got, like, fox lips. Like, you know how the gums of dogs and foxes can actually sometimes be black? Yeah, that's what's going on here. So she looks like she gets that extra animal aspect to her. Like, she's really leaning into her Vestayan nature. And it's just this little moment, this little flash moment where she just looks like, essentially Naruto going Kyubey mode. Like, wham! And then you get this look right here, like, with the smoky eyes and, like, those sharp eyeliners, like, oh, the eyebrows with the little spikes on them. And I do like how aggressive those, like, her face tattoo marking things are in this character model as well. And she's got these dark lines under her eyes, and her hair is a little bit messed up. And she looks dangerous. Like, she looks like someone with whom you do not wish to fuck. And I approve of that. Yasuo, on the other hand, not much of a change. Like, he looks a little bit more rugged and adult, I think, than he has in, like, the Kin of the Stained Blade cinematic. He looked a little bit more boyish, I think. But here, he looks like a grown-ass man all of a sudden. And I think he's got, like, a full-grown beard actually coming. Like, he's actually got motherfucker sideburns coming down, which is kind of funny. I wonder how Dinka is going to react to that when she realizes it. But yeah, more just badasses walking in slow motion. And one thing to notice about the way that they're walking in particular is that they're all exaggerating something. They're all exaggerating how much they're swinging their arms, how much they're swinging their shoulders, because they're moving in slow motion. And they really need to sell the swagger, so there's an exaggeration going on with the way that they're moving. That's really, that kind of helps sell the badassery of it all. And then finally we get Pike, who's here for some reason. Like, again, I'm really curious how they're going to convince Pike to not just murder everybody, but only murder, like, the ghosts. Who knows exactly how they're going to swing that one. But he gets a real, like, Sonic the Hedgehog moment where, like, he's running across something impossible. And again, just the strength of the key poses here. And this is just a full recreation, by the way, of his introductory, in some of the introductory art that he got. Is like this just him, like, this is basically his backstory that we're seeing with him being swallowed by the Jawl fish and the monsters of the deep, whom he now serves. It's not 100% clear in the lore whether Pike is in service to Nagakeboros, or if he's in service to some other kind of undersea mystical power of some sort. That's one of the things I'm hoping is going to be made clear in the Ruined King game itself. It's like, it's going to show us a little bit more of what goes on inside Pike's head and what he's like. But here you can really see with Alawi, like, how she's like, the animator is really exaggerating what she's doing with her upper torso. Like, she's really swinging those shoulders. And again, that's all just part of, this is a badass walking sequence, so the characters need to emote a little bit extra. And you can also see it on Yasuo, like, the way that he's just, like, loping ahead, like, he's walking like a Yakuza, basically, like, that's pretty good. And you can see it on Braum as well, like, he's got a slightly awkward strut going on there. Like, awkward in the sense of if you tried to do that at normal speed, it would look weird. But again, it's all part of selling the slow-mo. Which leads us on, finally, to the last bits of what's going on here. And there's not that much to say about the rest of it. What there is to say is that, hey, the water is hand animated, and it's animated, as you can see, on 2s. Which is, hey, a thing I notice. And even in this shot, by the way, even this shot of, like, the ship from a distance, still the water effects around the bow of the ship, still hand animated, still animated on 2s. I think also, yeah, you can see that the ghostly things flying around up here, also animated on 2s, hand animated by the looks of it. But here comes one of the showpieces, actually. One of the showpieces in terms of animation for this little short. One of the really cool things that they do, which is, and here again, you can see the smoke effects that are flying around the feet of the Ruined King are animated on 2s. But look what they do with them. As the smoke effects coagulate, you get the character model itself. Like, so what they have here is they have a few layers of 2D animation going on, and then they have the 3D model, which is slowly being, like, assembled by some kind of dissolve tech, assembling itself out of this black smoke. And you can see how they kind of, like, it's not that the smoke is really coagulating into the body of the Ruined King, it's that the 3D model is assembling itself as the smoke is rotating around it, but the effect you get is one where it looks like the smoke is, like, coming together and coagulating and, like, forming the shape of him. And you can see how this is a clever bit of 2D animation. Look at this bit of smoke right here. Look how it shapes itself slowly into the shape of a foot and moves forward. And then he steps down, and we get this little bit of, this smoke is hiding a little bit of what's happening behind it so that, like, some of it can materialize into view as this foot becomes a 3D model, slowly assembling itself, going upwards with, like, just 2D smoke effects all over. This must have taken so fucking long for the 2D animator to handle. 2D smoke effects all over the thing, just obscuring when pieces of his character model spawn in. You get this really cool effect of, like, he's assembling himself, basically, out of the mists of the Shadow Isles. It's like, oh, that's such a cool visual effect. Like, that's just so fucking cool. And of course he's got, like, tears coming out of his eyes, like dark, edgy magic tears. Oh, he's so sad. He's a sad boy. Oh, poor little guy. He lost his wife. I'm gonna mock him mercilessly when I play the game. And just to finish it all off, some more hand-animated light effects, a little bit of a flash frame, ba-ba-boom, and a bunch of hand-animated visual effects animated on 2s again, I see. Yep. Selling the power of whatever the hell it is that he's doing with the magic explosion thing or whatever. And the game is coming in early 2021. Anyway, whew, I think that's all of it, and it only took about 50 minutes. I got it under an hour, and now I'm going to edit it down so it takes perhaps maybe even a little bit less than that, or a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe I can edit it in a way that it becomes longer. I wouldn't put it past me. I want this game a lot. I want to play it. But if you've enjoyed watching me blabber on about this particular cinematic, then you can hit the like, comment, and subscribe buttons down below. And if Riot release another 14 cinematics over the next 3 days for me to take a look at, then I will. Don't test me, Riot. I fucking will. I don't care. I will do it. You cannot break me. I swear to God. But yeah, like, comment, and subscribe for that. And also other stuff I do. I just released an episode of my Bloodborne playthrough where I do a lot of analysis as well. So you could go look at that. I also have a Patreon, a merchandise store, and a tip jar. You can use them if you want to. If you don't want to, that's completely okay as well. Though, at the end of my videos, whether or not you want to support me, that's completely fine. But I do try to encourage people to, generally speaking, whenever it's possible for you, to support content creators directly with any contribution that you can, just on whatever platform is available. Because a $1 donation, especially to a small channel or someone who makes niche content that doesn't have a lot of commercial appeal, a $1 donation can quite literally be the same as thousands of views on a video. So if there's online content that you enjoy and you want to help people make more of it, consider supporting it directly when you can, with however much you can. Okay, last bit of self-promotion. I have a second channel. I play video games over the Let's Plays and stuff. I also try to do analysis. We're doing the Hades game right now, which is really fantastic. I've been having a lot of fun with that, and people seem to like that series. I've played Final Fantasy X recently. We're going to be playing maybe some Legends of Runeterra over there, some Monster Hunter World on stream. If you want to come and co-op with me and kill some monsters, you can do that. And like, comment, subscribe on that thing as well, I guess. Outside of that, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to wash your hands and wear a mask if you're going to be around people. And try to act in solidarity with those who are trying really hard right now to make the world a better place.